So it's my pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Soo-Kyung Seo. She's an assistant professor in the Department of Medical Education and also Director of Organizational Change Management and Director of Accelerate Leadership Program. She works as a transformation strategist for the EI office. Dr. Seo has many years of consulting experience with leaders in healthcare, manufacturing, and government agencies. So she's going to share her experience and expertise on the Leadership Foundation today.
Well, thank you so much for intro. Today's session is more about more conversational, and then hopefully it'll be more interactive and with a small group. I do have a presentation, but then it'll be pretty casual. So I need your participation. Let me share my slide here. Used to this, not my computer. So I'll just share briefly about my leadership story. So I was born and raised in South Korea, and then we do have more than South Korean professors in medical education, although we have 4 of them. When I was little, I was told that, oh, you're going to be a leader, you're going to be the first female president, and blah, blah, blah. So my dad was very encouraging. So I went to school and I was told I was too forward, and I was they didn't say too inquisitive, but I asked too many questions. It wasn't really a good thing at the time. And so I was just going through a lot of phases of am I too something? And I came to the States after graduating undergrad in South Korea, and I had a language barrier, so I was not able to ask a lot of questions. So by the time that I formed what I was going to say, the discussion moved on to another topic. So I was the quiet one first 3 years, and then to a lot of professors' surprise, I became the class president in my final year of a PhD program. So my professor was like, "Oh my gosh, you became talkative! I just learned the language now." So it was interesting. My leadership story was I felt like I was the same person, but then the perception around it was really changing. And then my language learning progresses, and then that also changed my personality. And I joined management consulting instead of joining academia for 10 years. And then it was very much of bring your only A game, and high stress, high pressure kind of environment. And then I was told I was too sweet. You're such a sweet consultant, which was not a compliment. So what am I going to do? And then I was trying to be so assertive, and it came across too terse. And my email was just to cut to the chase, and I got some feedback around it. So long story short, I wish I had some sort of a leadership program that really had some structure. And then I wish I had a mentor who told me that it's okay to be who you are and then be yourself. Your personality is okay to be a leader. Because I felt like I was wearing something that doesn't really quite fit me all throughout consulting for over 10 years. So it's last 5-6 years that I was at SIU, I started really appreciating authentic leadership development. So when Accelerate program was in the works, I paired up with Dr. Mellinger, and we were really hoping to develop a program that develops authentic character, leadership character, rather than all sorts of 10 different skills to be an effective leader, right? So it changes. So what is not changing, what is classic, and then way of teaching leadership is find who you are. So that was kind of the background of my leadership journey. And then that's why I became like so interested in strength-based leadership, not necessarily like what's hot in the leadership literature. So I hope that this session would just kind of look into yourself and then say, what do I already have? And then how can I use those skills even more rather than trying to find the gaps and then, try to be someone else, right? So today we're going to talk about the leadership myths and truth, and then what are some of the kind of characteristics of an exemplary leadership in terms of practicing every day. And we'll discuss what are some of the leadership journey goals for you, and then how to plan those things so that we can kind of take baby steps. Right? So I wanted to check in. So if you can take out your phone. Thank you. So the first question. What words come to mind when you think of the term leadership? Possible. Visionary.
Oh,
Yeah, all those things. Talks about some of the people listening to others, collaborator, facilitator. I think for the last decade or so, the leadership and then the image of the leader is slightly changing. It's not like someone who's more of a directing that this is the way, just follow me, to more of a facilitator, visionary, and role model, more of like servant to leadership. Yeah. And the next one is to think of the leaders that you admire in your life. More than one. We naming names here. I mean, like, you can say coworker or, your mentor, school coach, theater director. I don't know. Many leaders, but the leaders we admire, they're like two different categories, isn't it? And this is not necessarily for my information, but just more for you to start thinking about these people so that it'll be kind of closer to your heart. yeah, I was just throwing out there the director with all I. Yeah, there is somebody that comes to mind. Yeah, cool. And also like I admire some quality of this person and then like some characteristic of the other person. So, we have multiple people that we admire for different reasons. One more. So when you think about those leaders, what character or why you admire? Yeah, I see some of the characters like caring stood out, and someone who's trustworthy, innovative, very efficient, and also the spirit of that person, recognizing someone's skill, and then also being an advocate for voiceless. So these are all good characters. A genuine interest in me and knows my strength and recognize my skills. Those are all kind of a through line as well, right? Thank you for that. Let's see. Couple questions. Oh, so this one is for later. Let's go back to the presentation. So before I jump in, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So why you chose to come to this session? Who wants to share? Just
because I've come to other medicine sessions. But I don't know, I've been here at SIU for 12 years, so I want to continue to learn and grow in my position. And I want to feel like I'm not just stuck in a specific spot. So yeah, I'm looking to, I've taken on leadership roles, but it's always good to learn new ways to be good.
That's one of the great characters of your leader. Learner's mindset. Anybody else?
So, same thing, grow as a person. I think, this is a skill set that I will find useful and benefit from as a parent. In my family, taking care of my extended family, dealing with my patients. So it comes into play everywhere. If
Right.
not being a leader, having those skills, I think help.
Right.
It makes,
As a physician, I mean, in the practice or clinical setting, you're already a leader of your team, whether you acknowledge or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, very similar to what the doctor said, just so many skills that go along with leadership. Always wanting to try to improve on those and accelerate leadership program too. So, but I came today because might find out something today that we haven't gotten to yet or had missed or always hearing stuff again.
Yeah, everyone else's perspective is also very, that's how we learn as well. We have a couple of people in the online. How about John, would you like to share anything, or if not, that's
Yeah, it's actually kind of the opposite for me. I've been here just a little under 6 months, and so being fairly new to academic medicine, I know I have room for improvement. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more experience from people who've done it longer than me.
yeah. Okay, cool. How about one more person, Miriam?
Yeah, I've been here for several years and I have some leadership roles, but they kind of inadvertently fell into my lap. And I think I've done okay, but of course, there's always room for improvement and, advancing. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
It's great. Thank you. So we seem to have like a similar interest of like how to be a better leader. So we only have about 40 minutes and then we'll get to that, right? So what are some of the common leadership myths? It's like leadership is a rare skill that you just only limited people already have it. But that's not necessarily true. The leadership capabilities can be developed through practice and experience, just like any other skills, whether it's time management skills or just it gets easier, presentation skills, like first time you're super nervous, but then it gets easier. So that's similar. You learn as you go, but at the same time, depending on how you learn and where you learn, and the practice can be effortful, right? So it's better to have some sort of a roadmap, just like any other curriculums. So although it's not a rare skill, it's not secret, but then just using it as an everyday and lifelong learning commitment is the hard part. So leaders are born, not made. So it used to be more common in this belief, but these days with like servant leadership being more common, and I don't think it's not as commonly thought as a myth. So just like the first one, leadership is something that you can learn and grow. I think what is different is that like you may know your personality is very different from some of the typical leaders that you think that's, oh, I should be like super charismatic, I have to have a loud voice. And that's what I thought, when I started consulting almost 20 years ago. But I wasn't that. Like I start my voice like this, and then at the end of the sentence I talk. So it's whether it's a voice or a gesture, just if you are not performing with your authentic self, eventually it just catches up. So although you may not have some of the characters that you admire, you don't have from the leaders that you admire, but let's find what you already have. So leaders control others. Just from the answers on Slido in this group, I don't think you think that way. Leaders are someone who recognize everyone's needs and then skills, and then facilitate those skills, and then get things done for them, and then show the visions. So collectively, this room was just thinking leaders do not control others. So that was kind of common myth. Not my computer. Okay, it's just slow. So a lot of this, today's session is based off of the Leadership Truth. So James Kouzes and Barry Posner, they developed this assessment called 360. So you probably have heard about it. So the 360 evaluation was at the time very revolutionary because you usually evaluate someone like lower rank than you, but this is the one that you receive feedback from your peer as well as the direct reports. And so a lot of organizations, including ours, actually, it's a hard sell for leaders because it's scary, right? So about 3 decades of their research and the data was compiled, and they just extracted 10 different truths. And I just share kind of summarize into 5. So leadership skills are learnable, like I said, and you make a difference. So even if you do not have the leadership title, even if you're a medical student, you can make a difference by just listening to the patient's concerns and then just sit with them. Or even if you're thinking like, I'm just a frontline person, what am I going to do? But then you are the face of the organization. So understanding your role and what impact you can make is the first step of creating influence, because the leadership is not based on the title, but you create influence. So to separate that, the title and the rank versus what impact and then influence that you can create. And then your character matters. It's pretty obvious. So the character of caring, we mentioned a lot, but then always thinking about, is it because of my selfish ambition, I want to do this, or is it for the team and the shared goals? So when it comes to like a crisis and then important decisions, your character tends to show up. So building the character is a lifelong practice, and then that's why it's so crucial for leadership development. The local leader versus celebrated leaders. So celebrated leaders is like someone that's super famous, but you haven't really met, you don't really have like personal interactions and connections. And the local leaders are like your father, family members, or mom, and the coach, your director, that you just kind of know that person more. So research, according to these people, that their research showed that they were influenced by local leaders more. So even if we may not be on TV ever, or we may not have like bestseller books to influence the leadership literature, but you know, our kids, if you have any kids, if you're the role model for them, your team and clinical staff, people that you interacted at the medical school, and patients. So you can create influence to these people. So understand that just because you feel like I'm a local leader, I don't really have a lot of power, we can create power, and then we matter as well. So I already mentioned several times that building character takes a lifelong. So just like that, leadership takes a lifelong practice to continue to develop. So earlier I asked you about what characteristics that you admire of the leaders that you can think of. And then it's very similar, right? Like some people mention visionary. So that's actually one of the key differentiator between leaders and managers. So even when you look at the kids in the playground, and some kids will say, hey, let's play tag. Or like, oh, wouldn't it be fun? And then like there are a group of kids who initiate. And then like, even when you're a student, like, hey, let's have a pizza. Like, do you want to like order pizza? Like initiator, like, but at the same time, like you show some of the vision that like you cannot see. So it's not managing status quo and then operating, but the forward looking is like you will be able to see what's ahead of us. And so we can kind of direct which way we need to go. It's particularly important when things are chaotic and under crisis. So to be able to have this forward looking, you need to have a big picture as well. Like you can kind of lift your eyes a little bit and then like, okay, this is not forever. We can work this out because our goal ahead of us is important that we've done it. So you can always looking at the past as well as the future to be like forward looking as well. So, and then these characters go hand in hand with that honesty. If you are sharing your vision, we are not so sure, we cannot trust this person. Is it because like this person's own personal gain, or is it for all of us to move forward? And then it takes us some time to build trust. And then honesty is one of the foundation of building trust. So the interaction of caring should be genuine, not just to earn the other person's trust. And then inspiring, when you are forward looking and honest, that is being inspiring can come pretty naturally, but it also is related to communication skills as well. Because even if you think about all the forward thinking, but then the way it comes out is like, oh, we just need to get through this. And then like, okay, we're gonna pull like all-nighter for this week, but just this is what we have to do anyway. I mean, this is not inspiring, right? So there is a like better way to share your inspiration and forward-looking vision. So being inspiring is the character plus some of these communication skills I've learned. And being competent. Before I started like really getting into literature, I thought that as a leader, being competent is the number one skill. But actually, it came the fourth out of like 20 different leadership characters that they thought that it's, really important to be an admirable leaders. So although this is more of a baseline, as a physician, we just assume that you're capable of taking care of a patient. But to go above and beyond, being honest, forward-looking, and then inspiring, those characters make a difference. Any thoughts on these characteristics so far? Makes sense. Yeah. So think about the leaders that you mentioned that you admire. Do you recognize some of these characters in them?
No, I like that you put honesty as first, because that's the basis of trust. So if you don't feel someone's trustworthy, honest, then no matter how competent they are, whatever vision they are, if they're not honest, you never have a connection.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing we're hearing psychological safety a lot nowadays. I think that's because of the honest.
Mhm.
I think the leader has to give some of the environment and atmosphere that members can be honest to each other. I think that's the critical thing leader has to do.
Right. I mean, being honest doesn't mean that you talk about all these like embarrassing moments, right? But then being genuine when you're caring. I think in my previous talk that's similar to this one, I shared my story towards the end. And then actually, I didn't think about this sharing at all. But people said, according to the evaluation, that they liked the story actually better than some of the other research findings that I shared. So I was like, that's why I started with first. So similarly, I shared some of the ups and downs of my leadership and the struggles and how that fueled me to be very passionate about this topic and then teaching leadership in different ways. So you can kind of instill some of your stories is a kind of easier way to show honesty. Let's also think about what are some of the ways to incorporate these characteristics in your setting.
So from a perspective of honesty, I think what does honesty mean to me, or what does it mean? So I think honesty for me, if I define, of course, honesty is a part of your character. You're truthful, you don't have any malice or anything. But if we're in a setting, I would define honesty as my intention. So what if I'm being honest with a team, what is my intention? And so if that's clear, then honesty is better defined.
Yeah, it makes sense because like just not all truth needs to be told.
Exactly.
Right?
You don't have to say whatever, like, hey, this is my weakness. Okay, I'm a leader, but this is my weakness. I mean, listen. So in that setting, I would define honesty as an intention.
Yeah, and then also intent, and then also think about impact as well. Like just I said, like what am I gaining by sharing this, and am I honest? So you check your intention and then see if that intention can come across as you intended, or there are some ways that you're not so sure, and then think about like, then what should I tweak about those things? It's good thoughts. Forward-looking or inspiring. Do you want to see if anybody in the chat?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, actually, that's one I.
Oh, that was it.
Actually, chat.
In my setting, sometimes we talk about being false positive and how false positivity can kind of like not actually add to the situation. But I also look at the flip side of that as inspiring. Like if I am, because I'm an honest and genuine person about that, if I am actually really just fired up for this and positive about this, I think that can actually inspire in other people, because it kind of gets people to go along with it. If you're honest about it and positivity to it, can kind of bring up some of that, inspire people to be part of the thing that they may be hesitant about, but
forward-looking can be defined as a goal, like how do we grow those steps? So if somebody has an idea, has a vision set, is looking at somebody, he's a leader because he can see what somebody else can't see. So he gives them a vision and then they have to, work towards that.
Yes, yes. And then that's a very important job as a leader, especially, when the moral is low. So you can come in many different forms, so you can kind of show that what's ahead of us and what we are doing, how it's going to add up to that goal. Or individually, like, I'm just nobody, who cares? My job is just I'm going in and out, just going through the motion, but then show that how it really matters in your team and then what kind of work they're doing. So like you show their path. So you can do it individually or as a team. And then forward-looking doesn't have to be like a 10-year strategic plan. Depending on what team needs, it's like a next best step that we can do and then make that decision together. Anything that you want to add from online?
Too, like when I think about those like kind of last three, it's like a little bit of what you said with the safety, psychological safety. I think like being able to have a team, create a team that feels safe to express, but also like that you can recognize how they might fit into that like long-term vision and stuff too, like being able to pull up those people's strengths and say like, or even just sometimes pushing somebody into something that they may not have a strength in and just being like, somebody needs to do this, so you're gonna take it on and you're gonna learn it. And I don't know, I've had some really good like bosses before who were like, gave me a task that I felt like was beyond what my skill set was, and I was able to grow a lot by having to do that task, by doing something that I personally felt like, well, I'm not qualified to do this. And they're like, I think you are.
Yeah.
And I will, walk you along the way. And so I feel like that's kind of part of that, like, forward thinking / like inspiring piece is like, and also I felt comfortable to say, like, here's where my knowledge ends, because that was me, a safe place where I felt like I could say back to that supervisor, like, my knowledge ends here, because otherwise, if I didn't feel safe, then I might not have been able to express, like, I need help in this area, sort of thing. So that's kind of.
Because you already established trust, and then your boss sees you and they recognize your skill, and then always forward thinking for you that you have a growth potential here that we are not exploring just yet.
Yeah.
So that's like a really good leadership character, like building others. So one of the leaders that I admire is like, her thing is that, well, as a leader, to be successful, if I card tomorrow and then I'm not here, and then our team still goes. So it's like, I'm not the one who does the most of the work or most important work, but then build a team together so that we can be like working as a team. So leadership characters, these adjectives, it looks fancy and it's nice, but then it's like when it comes to practicing it every day, we needed some hard thinking, right? So let's just move on to how we can practice these things. So from the same book, it talks about 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So these are the 5 things that the leaders with these admirable characters often do. So the role models. So, basically number 1 is walk your talk. So I remember I have 2 girls, and I always nag them, like, turn off the light as you come out of the room. And then one day, my older one noticed that I didn't turn off the light. Like, Mommy, you didn't turn off the light. And then the younger one is like, don't you hate that grown-ups don't follow their own rules? And they're like, oh my gosh, you're 8. Anyway, so this is just one obvious example are trying to reinforce whether it's a rule or behaviors, and then just check and see if you are actually following. And then inspire shared vision. This is related to the forward thinking as well as inspiring. So there are many different ways to share next year's goal or what we want to do, what project is coming up, but then thinking about why, attaching why this is a big deal or why this might be hard, but why it's necessary. So just sharing the case for change. It's kind of a change management jargon. You start with why this is important. So think of your elevator speech when it comes to vision. And challenge the process. This is also forward thinking, but don't be afraid to change the status quo, because if it's going to make the team move toward the goal or help people to grow, so or always find it like, why we're doing this way, why not trying the other way? So just having the mindset of not be afraid of change for the better. It's important. Enable others to act. This is through caring, recognizing their needs and talents. To do so, you have to be a good listener. Without understanding and listening to others, how are you going to really effectively motivate these people? Because like when it comes to human motivations, it's like never the same. It doesn't fit. One size fits all. It doesn't work. So either you try to find 5 to 10 different common motivators that might motivate people, but it doesn't work as well either, right? It can be costly to execute those programs. So easy way, but it's not as easy to actually practice is to listen to. Sit down and one-on-one, how are things going, building relationships, and what excites them at work, what are some of the things that they are curious to learn more, what are some of the things that's tough for them, just to have some conversations. And then just understanding their passion that was not channeled well is a good way to enable others to act. And then encourage the heart. It goes hand in hand. I remember like Dr. Stacy Tobia was talking about, we were talking about this while we were preparing for a lecture. And so what would be an example of encouraging the heart? And I said, have you met John Mellinger, Dr. Mellinger before? So like he is a retired surgeon here, but then he's such a caring and loving presence. So I said, Dr. Mellinger does this all the time. Like, oh, and she said, oh, I got it. Like if you say like, oh, the sky is purple, and then like he would say, that's a very interesting perspective. That's tell me more. And then like, he would not squash any left field kind of comment. Thank you for that perspective. I'm curious to learn more about that. So in a meeting, he just has encouraged the heart to voice out their thoughts or doesn't nip it in the bud, even if it seems like, oh my gosh, where is this going? Or this project is not going to work, but he's always like encouraging people to participate. So that's kind of examples of practices. So now think about what you are doing already well. Or all 5, that's fine,
I think of some things in one setting, but that doesn't fill in the other setting. I'm looking at my life as a parent level and as a
Just whatever comes to
It's
mind.
different, it's
Yeah.
different, obviously.
That's fine. Apparently, I'm not good at, modeling the way of things. But I try harder at work. So for me, while I'm sharing, you can talk about it. But the challenge is the process. It comes so naturally to me. Yeah. So growing up, I didn't know that there was a profession around organizational change management, but it's like, oh my gosh, I love this because I always find some deficiencies and what are the gaps, and then why not, So I was instigator when I was little, and then just such a headache to many teachers, but I changed the lunch menu at my kids' his preschool. I changed the way they flow the car. So I am the kind of a parent who can be like, oh my gosh, she's calling again. But I do with an inspire, share, and vision. I'm curious why the kids need 2 brownies a day when they're like, this is sugar. Is it, I said, like, have you thought about other ways, incorporate more vegetables, and then at least cut some sugar and blah, 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 blah. And then they listened. And then the chef was very inspired by it. And so she had fun creating it. So anywho, so there are different ways that you can do. So number 3 is mine, but then I think I need to work on number 4 more, because I feel like I need to do everything kind of mindset. So number 4 and 5, I need that.
For me, number 4 is a big one for me. My main hobby, passion is a cooperative game where everyone gets to participate and everyone has fun. But what participation looks like for each person can be different than like what it looks for me. So I try to apply that for like group projects here at work, because everyone's going to have a different view of what their participation is. And maybe if we put on an event for the students, some of the people who participated did all the background, and then when it comes time to interact with the students, they're gone. But to them, they felt extremely equal as everybody else. Even though for me, the interacting with the students part is the big deal. So but everybody has a different way they want to interact with it. So enabling others to act is a big one for me.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And then Miriam asked the question, if you challenge the process, can you not come across as someone who's always picking faults with things? I think when I was younger in my profession, and then when I was like young, like high school students, I was definitely like, oh gosh, and but just share your intention. You mentioned that like your intention is, I'm just wondering why we're not doing it. There's a missed opportunity for our kids' health, or the menu changing, or it could be efficiency. Like I'm really pushing hard for project management and for a team to have like some like tools out there. It's been a long process. And sometimes I gave up, but then I say like, at least my portion, I do this, and then this is the good points, and then why not trying it out? So it's just the curiosity. It softens some of the rough edges when you are trying to challenge the process. So there's some finesse and art around that as well. So we all have our strengths. So instead of thinking, oh, I need to do more of this and that, like think of at least one thing that you're already doing, and then try to use it more. Kind of changing our mindset of developing leadership. So that was what we did. So the way I put together the leadership journey map is the name that I use for leadership. Basically, like leadership development, independence development plan, individual development plan. So your end goal is developing the leadership character. So think about the character that you want to develop. Do you want to be more of a caring, more of a visionary, or inspiring, or just known as like I am competent in all areas of whatever. And then you understand your leadership style. The handout I'm about to give it to you talks about 6 common leadership style. So we have more than one. This is just a snapshot of your leadership style, but understanding your style and when it works, when it might not be the best fit, really helps to communicate the change, communicate some of the challenges in the process, more inspiring as a shared goal. And then leadership skills, these are the competencies and attributes, your communication skills, your analytic skills, and the listening skills. We often just look at leadership skill portions, but, it doesn't necessarily add up. So that's why we wanted to start thinking about more of a big picture. What kind of leader do you want to be remembered as? People don't remember as like, oh, so-and-so was great at presentation. So-and-so was caring. So-and-so recognized my potential, right? So like 20 years, whatever from now, what kind of a leader you want to be and how you want to be remembered is a good way to think about your character. Any thoughts on the authentic leadership development plan? Or questions? So what I brought in is a quick way to check out your leadership styles. There are 6 different ones. So the wording is a little bit different because I used the original version from 2000 for Mann, who is a big figure in emotional intelligence. So, but then the article is from actually last month from Harvard Business Review. So it was more of updated term. Instead of like directive, they changed to coercive leadership style. And then instead of visionary, changed to authoritative. But I'll just go over real quick. When it comes to directive, one is like traditional 1960s, 70s, like more of a military leadership style. There are still like time and places for this, like crisis or chaotic situation that you have to like make a quick, forceful decision that everyone needs to follow. But if you are going to persist with this one, and then your team will crumble, and then I can guarantee that the team morale will go down for sure. Pace setting, I realized that when I was in consulting, I was always pace setter for clients. And then when I joined SIU 6 years ago, Dr. Clayman, my boss, used to say like, don't stop being a consultant, stop being a consultant. And I didn't know what she meant. And one of many things was like, stop just setting the pace. My pace were too fast or faster. So, and then it exhausted everyone, including myself. And it was not a sustainable one. But if you are kickstart, or like if the project kind of needed some momentum, then pace setting is good. But while you're pace setting, kind of look around and see how the other people are feeling. Democratic is someone who's seeking more of consensus. So good and bad, this type of leadership tends to ask a lot of questions and other people's thoughts and opinions before making decisions. However, it can take a long time, and sometimes you can view it as wishy-washy and then not decisive as a leader. So use it kind of, even if you can use it as a baseline, when it comes to time, you need to show that you can make a decision. And then sometimes you cannot make a unanimous decisions either. authoritative visionary is like inspiring, you see the big picture, and then you are forward thinking kind of people. So this is pretty positive in many, many settings. Affiliative is like really care for the bonding, emotional connections. So this kind of a leader tends to build psychological safety pretty quickly, and it tends to have a high honesty level as well. However, just to make sure that you don't show favoritism to someone who feel like closer than the other team member. So democratic and affiliated, someone who's like high in one tends to high in the other one as well. And a lot of women tend to be in that category, I noticed. And then from the leadership journey map and the portfolios that I've seen in the last two cohorts, as their confidence level and the self-confidence level goes up, and then their imposter phenomenon goes down, and then I think the visionary tends to go up as well. So coaching is also another positive way. So you are investing in other people and building their capacity and their potential. So instead of saying like do this and do that and then ask more questions, but then at the same time without some proper techniques, coaching can take a long time and then kind of directionless, because it feels like, oh, we already have to go this way, but then Adam wants to go the other way, and then this is not where I want to hang out. You know, I want to develop this skill, but well, it's nice to do, but the must to do is this one, right? So it's even if it's coaching approaches very effective, but you still need to think about what is beneficial for the team. So these are kind of 6 different leadership styles. And it's common that you have more than like 2 are same score and then kind of pretty high. And like I said, this is kind of snapshot, and depending on what work setting you're thinking, it can change as well. So think of kind of general work setting when you answer these questions. Any question, thoughts?
I'm just curious, like, I'm just thinking of examples. So like how for a physician who might be in a really high stakes situation, but then, 30 minutes after the high stakes situation is working with a resident or a student and then needs to like, is there any like literature about like switching styles so quickly? Like, you're going from a really high stakes where you're like, this needs to be done right now.
Right.
And then down the road, you might be saying, so, let's sit down for coffee. And like, what is it that you want to do after? Well, like, that feels like a huge
confusion.
Yeah. Right. You have to wear like different hats of leadership.
Yeah.
So
I haven't really seen the literature around that, but I think what literature is encouraging is that, it's like building muscles. You cannot be good at everything, but then try to find what's kind of naturally good for you, but understand that the other things, the pros and cons of using it and when to use. So I think that's something that it's called the practical wisdom, doing the right thing at the right time. But it doesn't come easy. Like, I don't know, maybe that leader needs to say like, oh yeah, I'm switching my head. So, I was doctor mode, but then I am in this more of a listener mode for this team. So I think maybe even just talking about those things and then why switching that might be interesting. Yeah. I was just curious. Yeah. So this is a typical journey. You start with some of the goal, like we talked about character, but then, have something like a shorter term goal. Like we looked at in terms of the practice of what we are already good at. So your goal could be like use these more in this XYZ settings more. And then thinking about your actions and strategy, and the self-assessment kind of helps you where you are in the baseline. So action plan and strategies, oftentimes it happens through some of the reflection and reviews. So just keep repeating. What I found it helpful is that thinking about the context. So instead of saying, I'm going to improve my communication skills, but you can say, I want to voice out my thoughts in the meeting more. That can be a very specific task in context. So that you notice it in a year or in 6 months that, I don't feel as nervous voicing out my thoughts. And then if that becomes your goal, then to do so, what do you need to do? So have some of the smaller goals for the next 6 months and then see how it goes. That was the question. But I want to do 2 more quick questions on Slido to finish it up. So think of your strength in terms of either skills or characters or your experiences. May differentiate you from other leaders. Question is a good one. You've got a tradition background. For the longest time, I wish I just grew up here, but 20-something years after being here, I'm grateful for my diverse background. So, looking forward. Awesome. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. So I want you to think about what you're already good at and then your strength as well, combined with your goals so that you can continue to make small goals towards your leadership character development. So thank you so much. If you want to learn more about leadership development, we have Accelerate. It happens almost every 18 months. It's a 1-year program for like emerging and mid-career leaders. And then we have coaching as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your great session today. And if you have any further questions, you can definitely contact me or Gyeongseok or any other questions. Just for the kind of remind you that to appreciate today's session. It will be good to have a evaluation from you. So you will get an email from Crystal by. So just one thing, we will have a summer kind of break time for this workshop. So next session will be in September. So at that time, Sarah Stout from the patient experience office, and she will share about the patient experience. Okay. Thank you very much.